Welcome to Mr. Nightbleed, a place where true horror lives in every shadow. The stories you're about to hear are real, shared by those who lived through the terror. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare yourself. Because once the night begins, there's no escaping the fear. I've been driving trucks for over 20 years, seen every stretch of highway between Amarillo and Atlanta, San Diego and Chicago. If you've ever sat in the cab of an 18-wheeler at 3 in the morning, you know the road can mess with your head. The darkness isn't like city darkness, it's deeper, heavier. Your headlights carve out a tunnel, and beyond that is just black, endless black, broken only by the distant glow of a refinery flame or a gas station sign. Truckers don't talk about it much, but there are places on the road you avoid. Not because of weather or bad pavement or even cops, because the place itself feels wrong. For me, that place is a rest stop on I-40, somewhere between Amarillo and the Oklahoma line. Or maybe I should say, where a rest stop used to be. It started about 8 years ago. It was late July, one of those Texas nights where even after the sun's gone down, the heat sticks to you like a wet towel. I'd been hauling refrigerated freight, eastbound out of Albuquerque, running on too much coffee and not enough sleep. Around midnight, I saw a green highway sign, rest area, 2 miles. Now truckers live on rest areas. You park, stretch your legs, grab a soda from the machine, maybe catch an hour in the sleeper berth. I hadn't planned to stop, but my eyes were burning and I figured a quick break wouldn't hurt. The place looked half dead when I pulled in. One flickering sodium light buzzing over the lot, shadows jerking with every blink. The building itself, cinder block walls, single bathroom door, looked abandoned. The vending machines were still there, humming weakly, but the glass was so fogged you could barely see the candy bars inside. The pavement was cracked with weeds pushing through, and the trash cans were overflowing with God knows what. I set the brakes, killed the engine, and let the quiet settle. Except it wasn't quiet. My CB radio crackled to life on its own. Now, for folks who don't know, a CB doesn't just come on. You have to key the mic. Truckers chatter all night on Channel 19, weather, cops, traffic jams. But this wasn't chatter. This was whispering. It sounded like a man talking underwater. Words stretched thin, broken by static. The kind of noise that makes the hair on your arms rise before your brain even knows why. At first I thought it was bleed over from another frequency, but then the voice got clearer. It was repeating a set of numbers, coordinates. I know coordinates when I hear them. Every trucker does. We live by maps. I grabbed a receipt off the dash and scribbled them down. 35 Fountain 2570, 101, 8439. The second I finished writing, the CB went dead. Silence. I sat there a long moment, heart hammering. Finally, I pulled out my phone, punched the numbers into Google Maps. The coordinates pointed 20 miles back, to a rest stop I knew had been bulldozed years ago after some ugly incident, a murder-suicide. A trucker shot his wife and then himself right in the cab of his rig. They shut the place down not long after. I told myself it was a prank, some ham radio nut screwing around. I wanted to believe that, but something felt off, like the air itself was heavier. I climbed into the sleeper berth, but I couldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I swore I heard the CB hissing again. Finally, near dawn, I fired up the rig and got back on the road. That should have been the end of it. Just another weird night on the highway. But it wasn't, because every time I've driven past mile marker 211 since then, the same thing happens. The CB wakes up. The coordinates spill out in that drowning man whisper. And my hand, without me even thinking about it, grabs for a pen. I don't even want to. It's like a cramp, like my body isn't fully my own until I write those numbers down again. The first time after, I tore up the paper and threw it out the window. But the next time, I found the coordinates scrawled on the back of a fuel receipt I didn't even remember writing. Another time, I shut the CB off completely, pulled the fuse just to be safe. Still, the whisper came. Not through the radio, but straight into the cab like someone sitting right behind me, and my hand cramped and the numbers appeared again on a napkin. I told a buddy of mine, Rick, another trucker I'd known for years. He laughed it off, said I was spooking myself. So I dared him, ride with me one night, see for yourself. We hit mile marker 211 just after midnight. The CB popped alive, static rattling like bones in a tin can. Rick leaned forward, eyes wide. He heard it too. The numbers came, same as always. Rick's face went pale. He pulled out his phone, checked the coordinates. His jaw clenched. He said, "That's the old rest stop, Jim. The one where..." He didn't finish. We didn't talk the rest of the drive. A few months later, Rick stopped answering my calls. I heard from another driver that he'd left trucking altogether, bought a little place outside Tulsa, said he couldn't stand the road anymore. I don't blame him, because the whispers have been getting stronger. Sometimes it's not just coordinates. Sometimes it's words, broken sentences slipping between the static. Stuff like, "I'm still here," or "Don't forget me." Once, clear as day, I heard, "Stop at the old lot." I've never done it. Not once. I won't. But I'll tell you this, every time I pass that stretch of highway, I see something in my mirrors. Just for a second. A set of headlights that aren't there. A flash of chrome. Like another rig pacing me just out of sight. And every damn time my pen hand cramps, ready to write. Last week was the worst. I was eastbound again, hauling produce, dead tired, storm clouds rolling in. I told myself I'd just grit my teeth and make it past mile marker 211 without looking. But as I drew close, the CB exploded with static, loud enough to rattle the cab. I tried to ignore it. Then the dash lights flickered, the engine coughed, and then, God help me, the GPS lit up on its own. It rerouted me, drawing a line straight back to that bulldozed rest stop. I yanked the cord, killed the screen, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. When I looked down, my hand had already written the numbers again. Not on paper this time. On my arm. I don't remember picking up the pen, so that's why I'm telling this story. Because I don't know how much longer I can resist. Every time I pass that place, it gets harder. The whispers get louder. I've thought about quitting, selling the rig, but I know it won't matter. That voice will follow me. I don't know what's waiting at those coordinates, and I don't ever want to find out. But something tells me one night soon, when I'm too tired to fight it, I'll take the exit. I'll follow the line back. And when I do, I don't think I'll be coming back. Do me a favor. If you're ever driving east on I-40, somewhere past Amarillo, and you see mile marker 211, keep going. Don't slow down. Don't touch your CB. And for God's sake, don't. Pick up a pen. I've been driving trucks for over 20 years, and I've learned the road has its own kind of folklore. Every old highway has stories whispered between drivers over coffee at the counter, or told half seriously on the CB during dead stretches of night. Most of them are just stories. But what happened to me one night in Missouri still keeps me from sleeping easy whenever I have to shut down at an abandoned lot. It was mid-July, one of those sticky, restless nights where the air feels like soup. I'd been hauling a refrigerated load east out of Oklahoma, and by the time I hit the Missouri line, I was worn thin. Every real rest stop I passed was jammed full, rigs stacked bumper to bumper. Around midnight, I gave up and pulled into an old way station lot off I-44. You've probably seen the kind. Broken asphalt half swallowed by weeds, busted overhead lights, and a gravel patch where truckers line up when the official stops are, overflowing. I wasn't alone. 3 other trucks were parked there, engines idling low for the AC. I found a corner spot by the tree line, killed the headlights, and settled in. The night sky was bruised purple with heat lightning flashing on the horizon. Not thunder, just flickers in the clouds like someone snapping a broken camera bulb over and over. The cicadas were screaming in the woods, and even with my sleeper fan on, I could hear them drilling through the glass. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew I was waking up to a faint tap 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 on the driver's side window. At first I thought it was rain starting, but the glass was dry. Then the tapping came again, sharp, like fingernails. I blinked and sat up. My first thought was maybe another driver needed help, but what I saw froze me. A girl was standing barefoot on the gravel right beside my cab. She couldn't have been more than 20. Long, dark hair, tangled and hanging forward. A thin sundress stuck to her like she'd been sweating or rained on. Her bare feet were cut up, bleeding onto the gravel, but she didn't seem to notice. Her face was pale as road dust, and she just stared at me through the glass. Her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to stay put, but after a beat I cranked the window down a couple inches. That was when the smell hit me, sweet rot, like when you open a cooler that's been left in the sun with meat inside. The girl leaned closer, eyes wide and glassy. In a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "He left me here." Before I could ask who, headlights cut across the lot. Another truck was pulling in, beams sweeping over the girl for just a second. I turned my head toward the lights, shielding my eyes. When I looked back, she was gone. Just gone. I sat there breathing hard, trying to convince myself she'd stepped back into the dark. I even opened the door and climbed down, checking under my trailer and scanning the tree line. Nothing but gravel crunching under my boots and the hum of another truck settling in. By morning, I figured exhaustion had gotten the better of me. Maybe I'd half dreamed it. But when I walked over to the other rigs to shoot the breeze with the drivers, I mentioned what I'd seen. One older guy, a gray-bearded owner-operator from Arkansas, stopped me cold. He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just stared. Then he said flat, "She's been out there since '95. Don't stop here again." I tried pressing him, but he just turned back to his thermos like I hadn't spoken. The weirdest part? When I walked back toward my truck, I noticed a little smear of dark red on the gravel by my driver's side. Looked like blood. I don't park at abandoned way stations anymore. I'll risk a ticket on an off-ramp shoulder before I shut down at one again. That was over 15 years ago, and I can still smell that sweet rot when I think about her voice. He left me here. Some nights on the road, I swear I see her in my mirrors, just a flicker of a girl in a sundress, walking barefoot, through the gravel trying to find someone who'll listen. I've been hauling freight most of my adult life. Started out green and wide-eyed in my 20s, thinking the open road would save me from the factory floor back in Illinois. 30 years later, I had the gray hair, the scar under my left eye, from a chain binder snapping loose, and the kind of gut you only get from eating gas station burritos at 3 in the morning. I've seen some things out there: bad pileups, men frozen solid in Wyoming blizzards, hitchhikers who set off every alarm in my gut. But there's one night that still sits heavy on my chest whenever I think about it. I don't tell it often. Most truckers are superstitious as hell, and I don't need anyone saying I've gone soft in my old age. It was early winter, somewhere, along I-90 cutting through South Dakota. Empty stretch. You know the kind. No towns for 50 miles. Just the dark horizon broken up by the occasional exit sign or a pair of glowing eyes in the ditch. I'd been running long hours, a load of auto, parts strapped down tight trying to make Sioux Falls before dawn. The CB had been dead quiet for hours, just me and the hum of my diesel. The kind of night that makes you start talking out loud just to hear a voice. That's when I saw it. A set of hazard lights up ahead, blinking slow and steady. From a distance, they looked like a heartbeat pulsing against the black. As I came closer, I realized it was a rig, jackknifed across both lanes. Trailer sideways, cab crushed up against the guardrail, nose pointing halfway into the ditch. I eased off the throttle and pulled over, heart already thudding. Any driver will tell. You don't just pass a fellow trucker in trouble. Doesn't matter if it's snowing sideways or 3 in the morning, you stop. It's a code. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped down into the cold, and started walking toward the wreck. My boots crunched on gravel, breath fogging up in front of me. The hazard lights kept pulsing, painting everything red for a moment, then black again. The cab was a mess, Windshield spiderwebbed, front end bent like paper, and inside I saw him, the driver. He was sitting there, hands locked on the wheel, head bowed like he'd just fallen asleep mid-drive. "Hey," I shouted, tapping my flashlight on the glass. No movement. I tried again, louder. "You all right in there?" Slowly, almost reluctantly, the man lifted his head, and my stomach dropped, because when he turned his face toward me, I was looking at myself. Not just kind of similar, not just, oh, he's got the same jawline. No. Same weather-worn skin, same graying beard, same scar under my left eye. Down to the last detail, that man behind the glass was me. For a second, I froze. My knees felt weak, like the ground wanted to tilt out from under me. Then instinct kicked in and I stumbled back, light shaking in my hand. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, because what else could I say? The hazard lights kept pulsing, red washing over my face, red over his, making it look even more grotesque, like a mirror dipped in blood. Then headlights swept over us from behind, some car coming up the highway. I turned for half a second, shielding my eyes, and when I looked back, the cab was empty. No driver, no body, just the torn-up interior, glass glittering on the seats. I staggered backward, my flashlight beam darting all over. My rig sat parked, on the shoulder. The car that had passed was already gone, taillights shrinking in the distance. And the wreck? It wasn't there. The jackknife trailer that had been blocking both lanes was gone. No skid marks, no twisted metal. Nothing but wide-open asphalt stretching black under the stars. I stood there panting like I'd run a marathon, trying to convince myself I hadn't lost my damn mind. My ears rang with the quiet, broken only by the hiss of my own breath. Eventually, I climbed back into my truck, shut the door, and just sat there gripping the wheel until my hands stopped shaking. I drove the rest of the way into Sioux Falls with every hair on my neck standing up. I never reported it, never told dispatch. What? Was I supposed to say that I'd stopped to help myself on the side of the road? That a whole 18-wheeler vanished into thin air? But here's the part that won't leave me alone, even after all these years. When I finally pulled into the lot and shut down for the night, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My own tired eyes staring back, my own scar. And for just a split second, I could have sworn the face looking at me wasn't mine, that it was still his, the man behind the wheel, the one who looked just like me. I haven't driven at night since. I've been a long-haul trucker for a little over 15 years now, and in that time I've seen plenty of weird shit on the road. You get used to the odd things. Flickers of light in the fog, kids daring each other to wave at semis from the overpass, deer that dart out like they're trying to commit suicide. Most of it can be explained away if you're tired enough, hungry enough, or just desperate to get home. But what happened near the border of Texas and Louisiana still sticks with me. The locals out that way whisper about a missing mile marker, 666. Ask the Department of Transportation and they'll tell you it doesn't exist. The signs jump from 1665 to 667, nothing in between. But if you talk to the drivers who've run the I-10 at night, especially in the fog, you'll hear a different story. Some say they've seen it, glowing like a neon omen. Others say the road bends wrong there. I used to laugh it off, just campfire talk for guys running on caffeine and boredom. But after one particular night, I don't laugh anymore. It was late September, sticky Gulf heat that didn't break even when the sun went down. I'd picked up a load in Houston headed toward Baton Rouge. Nothing unusual, just pallets of industrial chemicals. My dispatcher told me to run it straight through. I wasn't thrilled, but I'd done worse. Around 2 a.m., I crossed into the piney woods. Heavy fog was rolling in off the Sabine River, the kind that swallows your headlights whole. I slowed down, set the cruise steady at 50, and leaned forward, against the wheel, eyes straining for any hint of deer or stalled cars. That's when I noticed it. Up ahead, barely cutting through the haze, was a mile marker. Big green reflective numbers, 666. I thought my eyes were playing tricks. Everyone knew it skipped. Hell, drivers joked about it constantly. But there it was, clear as day. And it didn't shine back green like normal reflective paint. It glowed cold, bluish white, almost like a black light hitting bone. I eased off the gas and muttered to myself, well, ain't that something? But when my eyes dropped back to the GPS, I saw something that made my stomach clench. Recalculating. The screen wouldn't settle. It kept looping, glitching like I'd driven off the map entirely. I looked up again, and the road didn't feel right anymore. The stretch was straight, but the horizon looked warped, bent in a way I can't describe, like it was stretching farther away, curving at an angle that didn't belong on Earth. I drove another 10 minutes, then 20. My clock ticked past 3. But the same patch of forest kept sliding by, same bent pine with a snapped top, same crooked road sign warning of slippery when wet. It shouldn't have been possible. Finally, I slammed the wheel with my palm and cursed. What the hell is going on? I checked my log. It showed my rig had been idling the whole time, not a single mile recorded. My engine was purring, but as far as the computer was concerned, I hadn't moved an inch. I'll admit, panic set in. My hands shook on the wheel, my throat dried out. I felt this crawling sense of being watched, like eyes pressed against the back of my skull. Then my CB crackled. Through the static came a voice, low and dragging like someone underwater. "Driver, you're off your line." I froze. My CB wasn't even on an active channel. Hell, I hadn't touched it all night. I tried to respond, my voice cracking. "Who's out there?" The reply came after a long pause. Turn back. Then silence. I don't remember making the decision to stop, but next thing I knew I had pulled to the shoulder. The fog swirled thicker, heavy as smoke. I opened the door, just needing fresh air, my boots sinking into mud. Thick, wet mud that clung to the treads and stank of swamp water. Thing was, it hadn't rained in weeks. The ground should have been hard-packed and dry. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it down the ditch. That's when I saw prints. Bare feet, small, like a child's. They led from the tree line straight up toward the shoulder and ended at my driver's side door. I whipped the beam around, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Just fog curling into the woods. I climbed back, into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. I didn't even bother wiping the mud off. That's when the smell hit me. Wet earth, sulfur, and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. It filled the cab, thick and suffocating. My stomach rolled. I gagged and hit the vents, but the stench only grew stronger. Then in the passenger seat, the fabric indented, like someone had just sat down. I didn't look. Couldn't. My peripheral vision screamed at me that there was something there, a weight shifting, invisible but undeniable. My hand fumbled at the ignition. I turned the key hard enough I thought it would snap. The truck roared to life. I floored, its wheels spinning mud as I pulled back onto the blacktop. The fog parted just enough to reveal another sign. 6 and 6-7. And just like that, it was over. The GPS recalibrated. The stench faded. When I pulled into the first truck stop, my log showed I'd been idling for over 2 hours. My clock said 4:45 a.m., but I swear only 20 minutes had passed. I climbed down, legs shaking, and looked at my boots. Caked in wet mud, thick, fresh, impossible mud. The lot attendant came out for a smoke and eyed me funny. "Where'd you pick that up? Ain't been a drop of rain out here since August." I didn't answer. Couldn't. I've heard other drivers swap stories about the missing mile marker since then. Some laugh, others go quiet. But whenever the subject comes up, I keep my mouth shut, because I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if I drove through some kind of fold in the map, or if something else was out there waiting for me. All I know is this. If you're ever running I-10 eastbound and you see 60C6 glowing in the fog, don't stop. Don't slow down. And for the love of God, don't open your door. Because whatever walked out of those woods, it knows how to climb inside. I've hauled everything. Onions that rotted in my nose for a week, machine parts stacked wrong, fireworks I pretended were electrical components, and once a pallet of teddy bears that kept staring at me in the mirror. You drive long enough, and you learn 2 rules. Keep your head down and don't carry what you can't explain. That second rule sounds simple until the wrong kind of money meets the right kind of debt. That was me in October of 2016. Rent late, truck note worse, ex-wife circling for child support like a hawk. So when Rick slid into the booth at the Sunrise Diner in El Paso and said he had a cash run, no paperwork, quick turn, I told myself I'd hear him out and then say no. I didn't say no. Rick had that look of a guy who knows 100 phone numbers and 0 birthdays. Grease under the nails, Bluetooth tucked to his ear even when it wasn't on. He kept his voice low, like, the ketchup bottle was wired. Short pull mic. Hook a preloaded 48, take it east on I-10, swing up to I-20, drop in Midland. No checkpoints, no stops except fuel. I'll make it sweet. How sweet? I asked without looking at him, because I didn't want to see my face wanting it. Envelope in Midland. Enough to catch you up and then some. What's in it? He formed a little church steeple with his fingers. Less you know, the better. Think. Overstock. Overstock that needs chains on the back doors? Rick smiled at that like I'd passed a test. You're a professional. Just keep it shut. He slid a folded card across the table with a pickup address near the freight yards. Tonight, the guys are waiting. I stared at the address long enough to memorize it, then tucked it in my wallet. I should have walked out. Instead, I paid for my coffee, nodded to Cheryl at the register. She'd seen me so many midnights she didn't even ask for my name anymore, and told Rick I'd make the pull. The pickup lot sat on the dead edge of town where El Paso's light thins out into hard black desert. A razor wire fence rattled in the wind like faint applause. The trailer was backed to a rusted dock, unmarked white, clean enough to reflect the sodium lights in a dull beard of orange. The doors were shut and cross-chained, not sealed with a numbered tab like normal freight, but real chains, thick as my thumb, padlocked. 2 men stood by. They weren't warehouse guys. No safety vests, no oil on their boots. One wore a tucked-in white shirt and mirrored aviators even though it was midnight. The other had a cigarette burned down to the filter and somehow still drawing smoke out of it. I rolled my rig up, set the brake, and stepped down. We good? I said, trying to sound like the kind of driver who'd done this before. Aviators. Didn't answer at first. He looked at the trailer like he was listening to it. Then he nodded to the dock worker inside the shadows, who hit a switch. The dock plate clanged and retracted. Hook and go, Aviator said. Don't open the doors, don't stop except fuel, no way stations. You got a bill of lading? I asked, out of habit more than hope. He shook his head once. You won't be stopped. That's not an answer, and every part of me registered that, but I was already backing under. When the kingpin locked, the plate thunked the way it always does, a sound that saved my life more than once. I did. My walk-around, knocked the tires, checked lights. Everything was too fine. New super singles, reflective tape perfect, VIN plate clean. I put my hand flat on the trailer wall. The metal felt wrong, cool enough to fog under my palm. The desert air at midnight was 75. That wall felt like a refrigerator. Reefer running? I asked, mostly to say something. No unit. Cigarette set around the stub. Gravity's your friend tonight. I didn't like that line. I liked it even less when I climbed into the cab and felt the whole rig sit lower, like a man easing into a couch already full of people. Heavy is fine. You learn heavy. This was heavy, like the road had tilted under me. I told myself it was overloaded, pallets of something dense, ball bearings maybe, and pulled out to I-10. If you don't know that stretch between El Paso and Van Horn, it's long black silk with pinholes where the stars come through. The desert doesn't move, but you feel watched by it anyway. My radio was low, weather band muttering about a dry front, gusts from the west. After an hour, I realized I was riding the throttle harder than I should have been on level ground. The truck was working like we were climbing, though the dash said flat. Oil pressure good, water temp steady. Nothing wrong, just more of everything. I passed the Border Patrol checkpoint at Sierra Blanca. The lit canopy made everything look stage fake, the bleached white of signs and cones going nuclear under those lamps. A dog handler stepped forward and then stopped like he'd walked into a glass door I couldn't see. He flicked a glance at my trailer and pulled his dog back. The shepherd bristled, tail low, throat deep, with a sound that wasn't quite a growl. The agent waved me through without making eye contact. It's not unusual to get waved. It is unusual to be avoided. I fueled at a Love's near Van Horn. The pump clicked off and the handle snapped back like the hose was heavy too. The night clerk inside had half a dozen bracelets and a library book by the register. She glanced at my truck while she made change and then very deliberately tilted her head so she wouldn't have to see the trailer in the corner of her eye. "That yours?" she asked. Same line everyone uses when they already know. "Yeah," I said. And I worked out how I could make it a joke. Ugliest paint job in West Texas, right? She tapped her nail on the counter, then slid my receipt across without touching my fingers. "Roads are clear tonight," she said. "You take care." I walked back out into the stink of diesel and hot rubber. I told myself I was spooked by my own shadow and that nothing human can hide in a 48-foot box without running out of air. Then I put my ear to the metal. There was breathing inside. Not small, not shallow. Long, slow pulls, the kind you hear when somebody's finally asleep after a long day. The kind you can count if you're lying awake next to them. I jerked back so hard I wrapped my head on the ICC bumper. "Hell no," I said out loud to nobody. It echoed under the canopy like the concrete had an opinion. I circled the rig, checked the door chains because I needed the ritual of it. They were tight, the padlock centered, everything the same as it had been. I looked across the lot. 2 other trucks, both with their curtains shut, and a guy in a faded Longhorns hoodie working a squeegee over his pickup windshield, humming to himself. Normal night, normal noises. Except for the sound I could still hear even after I'd stepped away, the way you can still hear a ringing phone after you hang up. I told myself if there was someone in there, they were dead if I opened it and dead if I didn't. That's a sick logic loop you can get stuck in when you're tired and scared. I did what the instructions said. I climbed back in and drove. Past Kent, the wind came across I-10 in hard fists. Dust devils spun in the median and crossed like apparitions that didn't care about lanes. Every time the gusts hit, the trailer leaned. And when it leaned, something inside it leaned back. Not a slide, not a pallet shift. More like a sleeper, rolling toward the low side of a bed. The truck would correct and then I'd feel that correction a second time, as if the thing inside had thought about it and decided to copy me. I turned the radio up and tried the CB to keep my mind occupied, but all I got was that empty midnight hash. My antenna sometimes picks up Spanish stations out of Juarez out here. Nothing that night, as if the air had been muffled. I didn't stop again until the rest area west of Pecos, the one with the picnic shelters shaped like little concrete UFOs. I pulled into a slot, set the brake, and sat there with my hands on the wheel while the engine idled. I could feel it through the frame rails now, not just hear it. That slow breath pushing a little against the walls, easing back. The glass of water in my cup holder made tiny rings like the surface understood something I couldn't. Every sensible part of me said to drop the trailer and call Rick. But sensible parts lose their vote when you're in debt to the wrong people, in the wrong part of Texas at the wrong time of night. I killed the engine, got my flashlight, and stepped down into the wind. The chain rattle started before I got to the back. It wasn't a hard shake, just a tremor, the way a chain rings if someone touches it from the other side. I stood there with my light bouncing off white paint and told myself it was pressure changes, air moving in the box, heat differentials. I even put my hand on the door to feel the temperature like I knew a godforsaken thing about physics. It was cold enough to burn. When I lifted my hand, there was the near-invisible smear of my skin oil on metal turned to frost. I put my ear to the seam. The breath came slow and deep, and so close it could have been mine. I undid the first padlock with my key because my body knew how to do that motion from 1,000 docks and I was too scared not to do something I knew. I slipped the chain and it whispered against the steel. I told myself I would crack it 1 inch, just air, just enough to know I wasn't insane. I pulled the left door a finger's width. The breath stopped. I didn't think. I slammed it and shoved the chain back through and locked it. A soft, patient exhale came from the other side, like I'd disappointed someone who had all the time in the world. I walked back to the cab in a straight line because if I let myself even glance into the darkness under the trailer, I knew I'd never climb up again. Midland sits where the desert gets bored and grows pumps. I-20 goes by in a ribbon of orange flares from the oil fields, flames burning off gas like the ground itself is exhaling. The closer I got, the heavier it felt. My rig knows those grades. I know the sound of my engine when it pulls. That night it strained like a man shouldering another man, and that second man didn't want to be carried anymore. My mileage tanked so hard it felt like I could see the needle move. When I rolled into the drop yard, chain link high enough to keep out God, floodlights bright enough to keep him from trying, my lower back felt like someone had been punching, the same spot for hours. A man in clean boots waited. His shirt looked pressed like he'd brought an iron to a trucking yard at 4 a.m. He didn't check my bill, because I didn't have one. He didn't glance at my plate or ask me to break the seal I didn't have. He just walked along the trailer with his hand brushing the metal like he loved it. "You carried it well," he said without looking up. His voice was the kind that had been practiced elsewhere and brought out when needed, like a good pen. "Next time we'll give you 2. He didn't hand me an envelope. He didn't say numbers. He didn't say my name. A man in a skid loader waved me toward a spot to drop. I did. I cranked down the landing gear, pulled the 5th wheel, gave the glad hands, a quick twist and rolled out. The man in the pressed shirt had his back to me, both palms on the trailer now. The pose looked like prayer. Or feeding. I didn't go back to the Sunrise Diner for 2 days. When I did, Cheryl poured my coffee without asking and said, "You look like hell." "I'm sleeping," I told her. "I'm just not good at it." "How'd your run go?" "Don't ask me that." She didn't. That's a compliment where I come from. You ever try to scrub a smell out of your clothes that you can't name? Something that isn't sour or metallic or sweet, but all 3 hiding under dust? I washed my cab upholstery with vinegar and baking soda like a YouTube tutorial told me to. I tossed my sheets. I left both doors open in a breezy lot for an hour. Every night after that, when I pulled the curtains and killed the dome light, I heard the breathing again, not from the trailer I didn't have anymore. From my vents, from the space behind the seats, from the floor, where you stash tools, and the bottle jack. I told myself it was road exhaustion setting a hook. My tired brain was doing what tired brains do. I kept the radio low and slept in pieces the way you eat when you're sick. I could have left it there. Plenty of scares end with nothing worse than a story. But you can't leave it when money was promised and never delivered. That's not just about the cash. That's about the kind of people who think they can stare through you and say, "Next time we'll give you 2. I called Rick a dozen times, straight to voicemail. I drove by his duplex out on the east side and a kid's bike was in his parking spot. A woman 2 doors down told me she hadn't seen him. "He's around," she said, like she didn't want to be part of this sentence. I looked up the lot online where I'd dropped and the business didn't exist under any name I could verify. The address pulled up an industrial property management firm with a website that felt like a fake mustache. A week after the run, I fueled at a truck stop outside Monahan's. The sky was the color of dry paper, and the sand cut the wind into little knives. A kid in a hoodie and a backward cap ran the wash bay there, name tag said Devin. He took one look at the undercarriage of my rig and asked if I'd driven through a salt storm. "What?" I said, because jokes from teenagers usually come out sideways. He held up his phone with its flashlight on and shined it along my ICC bumper. White crust the size of a handprint spread out from the hinge seam. I scraped some with my fingernail. It came away like frost. "How long you been parked?" he asked. 20 minutes, I said. "Nah," Devin said, backing out of the light. "No way." I paid him cash to hit the whole thing twice. He didn't get it all. When the sun hit the trailer frame just right, even with no trailer, just the back of my cab, you could see the outline of a palm, 5 finger marks long as rebar, bending toward the ground. I told myself, steel sweats, temperature differentials, Weird road chemistry, someone spilled something where I parked. Those are all real things. They just don't make prints. 2 weeks after the run, I pulled into a yard in Odessa for a legit load, and my dispatcher handed me a scale ticket like he was trying to get rid of it. "You left this last time," he said. "I haven't been here since." I stopped. The date on the ticket was the morning I dropped the white trailer. The first line said my gross was 76,400, legal but heavy. The second line, printed 6 minutes later for a reweigh, read 77,180. I know how scale drift works. It doesn't work that way. The third line, same axle spacings, same timestamps, said 78,020. Like the road itself had been loading me while I sat still. I still keep that folded in the glove box. It's my relic. When I need to prove to myself I didn't dream it, I touch it. It didn't stop at noises and numbers. A state trooper pulled me over near Big Spring for a light out. He was a younger guy, name tag Diaz, polite as an instructional video. He asked for my license and medical card and then hesitated, like he was trying to place my face. "You all right, sir?" he asked. "Just tired." "You hauling tonight?" "Empty to Abilene for a pickup." He glanced at my mirrors, at the space where a trailer should have been. He reached toward his radio and then didn't key it. "Would you pop the hood?" he said eventually. I did. He leaned in like someone had told him the answer to a question was under there. His breath made a cloud on the radiator cap. West Texas in October, and he's fogging my rig like it's January in Amarillo. He shut it and his hand shook. "I'm sorry for the stop," he said. "Fix that light when you can." "You didn't write me," I said, because I was raised on the kind of gratitude that says you're not entitled. "No, sir," he said, looking at his car like it had just moved an inch on its own. "No, I did not." I drove to Abilene and back past midnight and caught a pair of white trailers running nose to tail at speed. No markings, no numbers. That's not rare. A lot of companies like a clean look. What made my stomach knot was that the road was empty enough to count the little reflectors flashing under them, and I swear the flicker under the second matched the flicker under the first, a half second later, like a breath being echoed. I turned down work after that. The legitimate runs didn't feel right. The illegitimate ones were out of the question. My savings bled. A man with a soft voice from the bank left voicemails that were very sorry and very firm. I started running nights with no radio, just the low hiss of my tires and the breath from the vents I was pretending was the wind. It followed me. At the light in Fort Stockton where US 285 peels off north, my cab rocked like someone had stepped up on the running board and then down again. At a rest area near Sweetwater, I woke to my dome light on and my glove box open. Nothing missing. The scaled ticket folded differently than I'd left it. Cheryl at the diner asked me once if I wanted to sit at the back booth. I never sit at the back booth. I like to be able to see the door. "You want me to call someone for you?" she said, like she knew that phrase was safer than naming any kind of help. "Call who?" I said, and we both let that hang. "Rick came in yesterday," she said then, like it was a new subject. "Looked thinner." I didn't answer because I didn't want her to see what that did to me. "He sat where you are. He asked if I'd seen you. I told him no." She set a coffee down that I hadn't asked for. "I told him you're real hard to find, Mike." "Thanks," I said. I couldn't make it sound like anything else. A month after the run, my phone rang from an unknown number. The voice on the other end said my name like it had practiced it. "We appreciate the carry," it said. Not a question. Not a person. "Next time, I'm not your guy," I said, but the line had already clicked dead. I tried to put it behind me, I really did. But you don't forget the geography of fear. It has its own exits and mile markers. It was early December when the bank finally called it in and I found myself in a gravel lot behind a tire shop, talking to a man about selling my truck faster than I wanted to. He needed a proof of maintenance I didn't have in the glove box. I told him I'd swing by my storage unit and bring it in the morning. I climbed back into my cab like a man stepping onto the porch of a house he's moving out of. I've never wanted to sleep less and needed to sleep more. On the way out of town, just past the Monaghan sandhills, my check engine light winked and then turned steady. I'm not one of those guys who drives through a red. I pulled into a truck wash lot because it had space and light. The wash bay was closed, but the concrete still shone with the wet. I popped the hood and peered at belts I've replaced since before Diaz had his driver's license. Everything looked fine. I shut it and heard the chains. I didn't have a trailer. There were chains. They weren't metal on metal, not really. It was the ghost of that sound. The memory of it caught in my skull and replaying with new air. I moved to the back of the cab, and there, at the corners where a trailer would meet the frame, long streaks of white climbed up the metal like frost, trying to remember the shape of a door. "Okay," I said out loud, because this is what men say when there are no other words left. I went inside and asked for a coffee. Devin had grown a mustache that didn't fit his face yet. He slid a cup across. "Rough night?" "Just a light," I said. "Can you look at something on my frame?" He didn't want to. He did anyway, because that's how you know someone's a good kid. He shined his light where I pointed and said nothing. He stood up, cleared his throat like the air had turned to syrup in there, and asked me if I wanted the bay open. I told him no. It was 2:21 a.m. when the breath came from the space where a trailer ought to be. I know that because my phone recorded a memo without me asking it to. I didn't know this until later. The file is called 2:21 a.m., and when you play it, there's a hiss and then a pull of air like someone dragging a heavy bag across a concrete floor out of frame. Then my voice, small and plain, "I can't carry you." I don't remember saying that. I do remember the landing gear on a trailer I didn't have slamming down hard enough to rock my cab. The jacks dropped so fast that the phantom hitch yanked my frame back half an inch like an invisible hand had let go. I felt it as a relief that made me dizzy, like I'd set down a couch I'd been too proud to admit I couldn't move. I didn't sleep. I didn't go home. I drove to the yard where I'd dropped that night in October. There was a new padlock on the gate and a fresh sign with a generic company name in a font that lawyers pick. I parked across the road with my flashers on and watched. You can do that out there without anyone calling the cops because there is nobody to call. After half an hour, a pickup rolled out, slow, a man in a pressed shirt driving. He didn't look at me. 2 white trailers sat with their doors toward the fence. There were other trailers too, real ones from real companies with decals and numbers, but those 2 made the others look like toys. Devin's coffee had gone cold when I realized I needed to see the back of them. I don't make a habit of cutting wire. I own wire cutters because all truckers own wire cutters. The fence surrendered like it wanted me on the other side. I stepped through and my boots scuffed up dust that smelled like rain wasn't coming back. I stayed out of the cones of the floodlights the way you do even when you know there's no camera feed going anywhere a human sees. Up close, the white wasn't paint. It was a skin of something that reflected light without admitting it. I put my hand on it and felt the kind of cold that burns. The chains on one door were new. The other had the same links I remembered. The kind with a slight bend to them where a guy had used a cheater bar on them once and learned why you don't do that. I put my ear to the metal, and I heard nothing. It took me a second to realize I was hearing nothing the way you hear a refrigerator when it kicks off after running all night. The absence of a sound you'd gotten used to. The shape of quiet left behind. I took my phone out. I did not film, because I wasn't trying to make proof for anyone else. I don't think anybody has ever watched a video of a thing like this, and believed it who didn't already. I opened the voice memo app and watched the red line wiggle as it recorded me breathing. I edged the chain through the hasp. I set the padlock gently in my pocket. I pulled the left door a finger's width. The breath didn't come from inside the trailer. It came from behind me, from the dark lot, from the space where my cab waited. It sounded like my own lungs returning to my body after a long swim. I felt it move past me, through the narrow gap in the door into the blank white box. It wasn't a wind. It wasn't air moving. It was weight moving, a taking of the room that made the metal change its voice. The door pulled itself gently out of my fingers like a sleepwalker guiding themselves around a chair. It swung wider until a blackness I can't describe leaned out. Not a shade. Not a shape. The kind of black you get when you close your eyes and press your palms hard against them until sparks come. The kind that has a pressure to it. It wasn't coming out. It was exhaling. And in that exhale, I smelled everything I had ever carried. Onions, rubber, fireworks, bears that weren't real with eyes that always were. "Mike," a voice said behind me, and I nearly fell. Rick stood at the edge of the light, thinner like Cheryl had said, like whatever fed those trailers had eaten from him last. He lifted his hands with his palms out so I could see they were empty. His left eye ticked in its corner, a small betrayed muscle. "You shouldn't leave it open," he said. "You're letting it get cold." "What is it?" My voice cracked on the last word into something I don't care to name. He smiled like a man reciting a joke he doesn't understand anymore. "Freight." "This isn't human," I said, because I had to say that aloud to believe it. "It's not human," he agreed. "Not anymore." A car turned into the lot, headlights spearing clockwise across the fence. The door eased itself shut so gently that my teeth hurt. The chain lifted an inch on its own and then settled. Rick took a step back like the fact of the lock relieved him. He looked at my cab. "You hear it?" he said. "I hear it." He nodded. "A lot of guys do after their first carry. Most don't say yes to a second." I didn't say yes to a first. He considered that. "I can get your truck current," he said. "2 runs and you'll be fine. They'll give you 2 next time. You'll be set for a while." "You hear yourself?" I asked. He winced, like I'd done something impolite. "We've got kids," he said. "We've all got kids." I thought of the men in clean boots, of the state trooper fogging my radiator in October, of the dog who wouldn't sniff. I thought of Cheryl moving, me to the back booth like the friend you don't call friend because you don't want to make her a part of this. I thought of the frost handprint high on my frame. I put the padlock back on the chain because something in me needed the ritual. It clicked the way a relief valve clicks when it finds the groove. "If I see you again," I said, "I'll keep going." Rick's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You will," he said. I walked back to my cab through the gap in the fence. The space under my truck felt crowded as I passed it, like walking too close to a person in a doorway. I climbed in and locked both doors out of habit. I put the key in the ignition and didn't turn it. I listened until I could tell the difference between the wind and breathing again. The wind tugs, breathing waits. I sold that truck a week later. The man who bought it gave me less than it was worth and more than I deserved. He asked if there was anything he ought to know. I told him the left turn signal sometimes stuck, and that you had to jiggle the wiper switch in a light rain. I did not tell him about the voice memo or the way the scale tickets can change while you sit still. I handed him the keys and watched him drive away and felt something in my chest go with him like a negative of relief. I slept in a friend's spare room that night and dreamed I was at mile marker 190 on I-10 watching 2 white trailers chase each other around the curve without getting closer or farther, their lights breathing twin ghosts across asphalt. I tried other work. I stacked pallets at a warehouse loading dock for 4 days, and my lower back gave me an opinion I couldn't ignore. I washed buses for the school district until I realized the sound of sleeping children is worse in your head than any sound in a trailer. I changed oil at a shop that didn't care who you used to be until a man in pressed boots came in for a tire rotation and asked for me by name. I told my boss I had to take a smoke break and never went back. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, and the dark has that heavy feel that isn't about light at all, I drive out past the edge of town and park where the road shoulders are wider than they need to be. It isn't smart, it isn't safe, but the night calls floors like that sometimes, and if you've ever lived under it, you know. I keep my phone in airplane mode because I don't want to hear a practiced voice say, "Next time," to a man who isn't me anymore. I roll the window down 2 inches and let the air in. If it's very quiet, I'll hear a long breath way out. In the desert, camped behind a hill where the cell signal dies, pulling itself full. I tell myself it's the oil flares, the pumps, gravity. Big words that make a shape around a thing and hope the shape holds. Then I roll the window up and go home. Cheryl moved to morning shifts. When I see her, I tip too much. She never looks surprised. She has a way of placing a coffee cup like she's settling a small sleeping thing onto the table. Once she asked me if I missed the road. I told her I do, and it's true. The road is a straight question. It's the loads that lie. 2 years ago, I was driving through Midland on my way to see my daughter for her birthday. New truck, not mine. I'd borrowed a friend's pickup, and I saw 2 white trailers in my rear view. They were further back than they needed to be. They were closer than they should have been. I pulled onto the shoulder and let them pass. No numbers, no dot stickers. Clean, hungry blankness sliding by. The second one had a handprint high on the left door. Frost where there should have been heat. The print faded as I watched like breath on glass. My phone buzzed then. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. I let it ring out and go still. I drove on, and I swear, for a couple of miles I could feel the truck bed sit lower, the way a couch takes your weight and then learns it. People like to ask, what was in the trailer? They want a word. A label they can set on a shelf and not touch again. I don't know the word. If there is one, it's older than any language we both speak. What I know is the sound of something that can't live where it belongs and needs a ride now and then. What I know is the feeling of a job you didn't agree to getting heavier while you sit still. What I know is you don't open the door, and you don't look long in your mirrors when the highway is empty and you are not. I hear it sometimes now, in places that don't have trucks at all. In a grocery store freezer aisle that fogs when I walk past. In the elevator when it stops between floors for a heartbeat, the kind of pause that feels like a decision. In the hall outside my daughter's room when I stand there too long, listening to the slow rhythm of a kid asleep and trying to figure out if the air is moving a second time a beat behind. If you're reading this because you've heard it too, if you were dumb or desperate enough to pull a box with no paperwork and a chain with no seal, there isn't advice. There isn't a trick. Don't try to talk to it. Don't treat it like a person. Don't tell yourself it's cargo until it starts to feel like a friend, because friends ask, they don't wait. Lock the doors. Make your drops. Keep your mirrors where they belong, on the side of your life, not the front of it. If they tell you next time we'll give you 2, they mean it. You'll carry both. You'll carry them whether there's a trailer on your frame or not. You'll carry them after you sell the truck and after you move and after you change your number. You'll carry them when you're sitting still, when the scale ticket says you got heavier for no reason at all. The worst part isn't the breathing. The worst part is when it stops. That means it found someone else to ride with for a while. On those nights, the road is quiet in a way you don't want it to be. You can hear your own heart unfurling and folding up again. You can hear the empty lanes like a jaw opening. You can hear gravity getting a little bit heavier until the morning when a man in a pressed shirt says to someone who doesn't know better yet, "You carried it well. Next time, we'll give you 2."